This afternoon, we are joined by Mr. Lee Blatt, who's running for Senate District 22, representing Richland and Kershaw Counties. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. We want to start off by letting our members get to know you a little bit. So if you would, tell me a little bit about your personal and professional background and how that shapes your views on education.
Sure. My wife and I both grew up in South Carolina and have been a part of the South Carolina public school system. We have two children, 3 and 1 about to turn 2. They're approaching school age. So I'm definitely heavily invested in our South Carolina public schools. I have a vested interest. As far as professional experience goes, for college, I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I got a bachelor's of science in aeronautical science where I became a pilot and subsequently moved back to South Carolina. I was actually chasing fighter squadrons when I met Sheriff Leon Lott at a military event. And he said, you want a car with blue lights and sirens, come work for me. So I was off to the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy. When I was in law enforcement, unfortunately, I saw the ugly side that, both students and educators are dealing with at home and in the classroom every day. After I left there, I flew corporate, got hired on American Airlines, flew as a captain there for about 5 years, had an incident, kind of akin to a severe migraine, and I lost my medical. Turned out to be a blessing, though. It was 4 months before my first child was born. And so my children have never known me, as a nomad living in a hotel room 2, 3, 4 nights a week, which has been great. And then, of course, it left me looking for a new career. So now I do business development for a construction company that builds hospitals as well as commercial real estate. And I've seen, a lot of bad policies like 388 that not only hurts commercial, but obviously the educational system as a whole, and things like that never being addressed. I'm a numbers guy. When I look at education, I see a lot of numbers that are very concerning, and I want to do everything I can to help turn them around.
Well, and let me jump to a number that concerns our members a lot, which is the number of teachers leaving classrooms in South Carolina. Thousands of teachers per year with hundreds of vacancies in classrooms to start the year. And we know that's not what's best for students. So if elected to the General Assembly, what steps do you see as being essential to help our state better recruit and retain teaching talent to our classrooms?
I think it's like you would do the same thing any private sector would do when you have that problem of recruiting and retaining employees. Pay is obviously a huge one. Other incentives like healthcare. I think in this case, stipends for teachers that are teaching in rural areas are all the first places you would go to answer that. I know we started it with S419. In fact, my opponent was one of 4 people that opposed it in the Senate for some reason. I think that bill was a really good start, but it lacks a little bit, and it's shown that education can't be fixed with just one big bill. It's going to take a series of small bills, which I think is the right direction to go, because if there's a problem, it's easy to replace or repeal a small bill as opposed to trying to carve out small chunks of a large bill, which is one of the problems we see with, which I mentioned a minute ago, Act 388. It's so big with such large ramifications, you can't just repeal it in any single day. It's going to take time and replacement legislation. But maybe we'll start with increasing teachers' pay to at least the Southeastern pay average. The future of South Carolina will be determined by students that you're educating today. And if we want to bring in businesses from out of state, we need a qualified workforce, and that starts in our public schools.
We've mentioned Act 388 a few times, and obviously that has severe ramifications for school funding in our state. And while Act 388 alone isn't responsible for funding inequities across districts, it certainly contributes to it. So if elected to the General Assembly, what do you see as the necessary steps to reform our school funding formula and revenue streams so that we can better ensure equitable education to all kids across all counties?
I'm sorry, it kind of broke up on me there again.
Good. In addition to
piece it together in my head.
Yeah, no. That's the 2020 in a nutshell. You get the fusing video.
It's a great year.
Yeah. In addition, obviously, you've talked about 388, and that's part of the larger pie around school funding. So from your lens, what steps do the General Assembly need to take to ensure that our school funding streams meet the needs of our students?
Um, you know, right now, education makes up 47% of our state budget. It's already a huge portion of it. Unfortunately, it only gets minimal attention. Um, I think we need to start by asking teachers and administrators what they need. And I think teachers have been too far removed from the equation. It's been more administratively driven. And I feel like administrators these days, especially at higher levels, are far removed from the classroom. I think it's going to take a lot of restructuring of our education system and the way the money's allocated. Right now, I'm told by a current senator that if you add in state, federal, local funding, we're 24th in the nation in spending, but we're, roughly 48th in the outcome in testing. And it doesn't take a lengthy algebraic equation to figure that doesn't add up. Um, you know, Almost 16% of except I kind of we're gonna roll this question into my vocational initiative. It kind of encompasses a lot of that. I'm trying to figure out how to piece it together. I think it's better just to get into it all at once. Roughly 16% of kids drop out of our high schools in South Carolina. The state publishes it at 2.2%, but that's super misleading. You can't divide the number of dropouts by every student in our education system. K-1 kids don't drop out of school. And then when you get to college, only 25% of our kids graduate. I don't attribute this to teachers at all. It's the design of the system as a whole. We're basically holding everyone to the standard of college or failure when college wasn't really meant to be for everyone. I'm not really sure exactly how we got here. I think part of it, most of your question was about finance. I think a lot of it is well, for one, we have far more administrators per pupil than the national average, and even far more than that in North Carolina and Georgia. I think there's a lot of money in the system that's lost, that's not being spent correctly, that needs to be spent in our classroom with our teachers, that are the most important part of our education system. Kind of more in that vocational talk where I was, I think we need a more realistic education system. I think it needs to be geared towards student goals with practical classes. If a student isn't geared towards college, let's not have macroeconomics. Let's have small or personal finance. Teach the kids how to balance their checkbook. Small business finance. Many kids that go into trades are going to start their own businesses one day. Just about any certification you can get at a tech school like Midlands Tech, I believe our high schoolers can graduate with, giving them real marketable skills. We can work with industry to try to figure out what skills they need for students or for entry-level positions, and students can get right out of high school right into a career. If a student comes out of high school with a certification as an electrician, starting salaries are in the $40,000 a year range. I have a buddy that he was hanging a picture in his house and he hit what he thought was a gas line. And so he had to call Dominion, cut the gas off. They found out, it turned out it was a Freon line, a HVAC heating and air line. But they got it fixed, got the wall patched. Then he had to have Dominion come back out, turn the gas on. They have to wait an hour to make sure there is no gas leak, even though gas line wasn't hit. But he got to talking to the fellow for a little while. He was, I think, 22, 3 years old. Worked construction for a couple years out of high school. Then he learned about being a natural gas technician, got a certification. And the previous year he'd made, it was $116,000 or $118,000 with bonuses and overtime. You can make a really great living without having to go to college. I don't want to knock college. Obviously I went to college. My wife's a pharmacist. She's very highly educated, but it's just not for everybody. So I would like to see our system more geared towards vocational or career ready, as opposed to just being something you can do as an elective in a free period.
Sure.
And all that would encompass changing where the money is allocated.
Right. Whether it's weighting toward CAPE programs, that's something the federal government did back.
Right. And those are great programs.
Right.
I think it's what I would understand being utilized a lot more, but I'd like to see things go a lot more in that direction.
So what you just discussed with career and technical falls into the umbrella of S419. That talking about job alignment was certainly in there. But you said earlier that you don't think that S419 could be one big bill, that there are portions that you would break out, obviously focus on career and tech as part of it. Is there anything else in that educational reform package that you see as being especially important to our state moving forward? I would say the most important aspect of it,
teacher pay, classroom size, to me, those are two big ones. I don't want to, it would take a week to go through and dissect us 419 as well as all the things that were left out of it. So I won't get too deep into that, but those are the two areas that I think we need to start in.
Okay. Another thing that's been in the news a lot over the course of the last week has been school voucher programs, because Governor
Sure.
McMaster tried to create a private school scholarship program out of federal COVID relief dollars, and the state Supreme Court has invalidated it. But the governor has said he would like to see the General Assembly create something similar on a permanent basis in the coming session. So if elected to the General Assembly, and if the governor brings that request before the legislature, what would your position be on that topic?
Look, private schools in Richland County, it's $15,000 to $20,000 a year. $1,200, $2,000 voucher isn't going to change anyone's mind on whether they send their kids to private school, and especially not going to help someone who can't afford it be able to afford a price tag like that. There are far better places that we can spend our money in the South Carolina education system.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground on a lot of different topics related to education, but I want to make sure our members get to know you. So is there anything that we haven't covered that you absolutely want to make sure our members are aware of before they cast their ballot this fall?
I think as far as education goes, we covered most of it. I think we got deep enough into kind of the vocational plan. I know there's a lot of people have different terms I like for it. Career ready, I think, is the newest one. For me, I think that's one of the most important things in education right now. I just feel like this. I'm not sure how we got started on this whole college, or everyone has to go to college mentality, but college, like I said, wasn't ever meant to be for everyone. I think it should be a stepping stone in your career path if it's something you need to get where you want to be. Personally, my wife and I have talked about this extensively for our two boys. And if we have any more children, we're not going to push them to go to college from day one. If they have a career path in mind, that's where we want them to go, then absolutely, I'll do everything I can to get them in college and keep their debt as low as possible. But, I don't want our kids going to college just to party and rack up, $50,000, $100,000 in debt, and then get out of college and not know where to go from there. And I'd also like to see internships in our high schools. I've talked to a few teachers that there's little bits of that going on around the state. I would love for that to be a much more integral part of our education system, so that students can learn what jobs are out there, what's available, what's life like doing different trades and different career paths. In fact, my wife being a pharmacist, I know her and a lot of other pharmacists from the outside thought it was a great career. Then you get into it and you get working. It's not exactly what you thought it would be. I know several doctors that have changed their specialty. They thought they wanted to do one thing their entire life. When they get there, they figure, they never did an internship to see what is it like when you get there. Fortunately, med school does a lot of that, so they can see what it's like. But how the internships are lined up in med school, I'd like to see some kind of a structured system in maybe late middle high school, so kids can see what's out there. I know it's hard to figure out when you're in middle school or high school what you want to do with the rest of your life, but I think if we can show people what's available, they can see what's out there, and then maybe they can get an idea of the direction they'd like to go in their life.
Okay. Well, and agreed, as a high school teacher, I've seen some great internship projects. And my middle school daughter did career shadowing last year at an architecture firm, and she's got the itch for architecture now. So
that's great.
I've seen that happen. Well, we appreciate you taking the time this afternoon to share with our members, and for your willingness to serve by running for office. Wish you all the best this fall. And if there's anything we can do, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hopefully next time I see you, we'll be dissecting the education system up at the State House.
Look forward to the conversation.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.